Today, we uncover the 7 bottled water brands the UK should be warning about. We reveal the truth behind their water and the labels. Because once you look past the marketing, the branding, and their natural spring stories, what you're really buying might shock you. For years, the British public has been told that bottled water is the cleaner, purer, healthier choice. A lifestyle upgrade you grab off the shelf without thinking twice. Meanwhile, many of the companies pushing that very message are the same giants behind fizzy drinks and sweetened beverages. And while they love to present themselves as guardians of our hydration, some would argue that the nation's well-being isn't exactly their top priority. What most people don't realize is that the UK used to be covered in thousands of free public water fountains. In the late 1800s, London alone installed hundreds. They weren't luxuries, they were public health tools, symbols of civic pride and everyday essentials. Fast forward to today, and you can walk through entire cities without seeing a single fountain. Many councils openly admitted they deprioritized maintaining them because bottled water was now readily available. That decision created the perfect opening for private companies to step in and dominate a public necessity. Instead of restoring fountains, councils began installing paid water machines, turning what was once free infrastructure into yet another revenue stream. It is truly a shame because in Italy, you can fill your bottle from clean, free fountains in almost every town square. France maintains ornate public fountains as a matter of cultural pride. Japan has hydration points everywhere, from stations to parks, because access to drinking water is seen as basic public infrastructure. Meanwhile, in the UK, the absence of fountains, especially in transport hubs like airports, rail stations, and city centres, leaves millions of people with no practical choice except bottled water. Convenience becomes the biggest driver of sales, and the industry knows it. Some would say, we've been conned by the bottled water industry, and they're laughing all the way to the bank. And the irony? For a product marketed as pure, pristine, and premium, science keeps finding something awkward. Bottled water consistently contains microplastics. Much of it appears to come straight from the bottle and cap materials themselves, PET plastic, shaving off from movement, pressure changes, or simply opening and closing the lid. The very container designed to protect your water can shed tiny fragments into it, all while many premium brands are happy to sell you half a litre for £1.40. More than double the price of petrol when you compare it per litre. That's one of the biggest markups in the entire food and drink industry, and the British public should never forget the infamous 2004 UK Dasani fiasco, when Coca-Cola launched its bottled water here, only for consumers to discover it was essentially treated tap water. That launch collapsed so spectacularly, and the backlash was so intense that the brand withdrew from the UK entirely. So today, we're going to break it all down. We'll look at each of these 7 bottled water brands, what they claim, what they actually offer, what customers are reporting, and why so many shoppers are beginning to question them. By the end of this investigation, you'll know exactly which bottled waters might not be worth the money, and why the bottle in your hand may not be the upgrade you were promised. Number 1. Smartwater. And despite the name, there's nothing smart about it. Smartwater earns the top spot for one reason above all: who makes it. After everything we just talked about in the introduction, Coca-Cola quietly returned to the UK bottled water market 10 years later with a new product, a new label, and a completely new personality. Same company, different costume. And they positioned Smartwater as something modern, scientific, sleek, and premium, as if this time everything would be different. But once you turn the bottle around, the illusion starts to fade very quickly. Instead of coming from a natural spring or a protected geological source, Smartwater is made using an industrial technique called vapour distillation. It sounds futuristic and clean, vapour distilled for purity, but all it really means is that the water is boiled into steam, fully stripped of its minerals, condensed back into liquid, and then has a small blend of minerals added afterwards to make it taste less empty. That's the entire process. There's nothing inherently wrong with it, but it does raise a simple question. How premium can a water really be if it loses everything that made it water in the first place? In many parts of the UK, especially in places with naturally soft water like Scotland, Wales, the northwest and the southwest, everyday tap water already has a richer mineral profile than what ends up inside a bottle of Smartwater. UK tap water is tested non-stop by the Drinking Water Inspectorate, one of the strictest regulatory bodies in the world, while bottled water follows an entirely different set of rules. Yet Smartwater often sits on shelves at a higher price than genuine natural mineral waters that actually come from the ground with their mineral content intact. The taste reflects this too. Distilled style water tends to taste very light and flat because almost everything has been removed. That's why so many people describe Smartwater as tasting empty compared to natural spring water. And that makes sense. It is empty until the company adds minerals back in afterwards. You're essentially paying extra for a process that takes the water apart, then puts a tiny bit of it back together again. So why is it sold as a premium upgrade? Because the branding is clever. Smartwater is packaged to look clean, modern, scientific, even intelligent. The bottle is tall and minimalist. The label is simple. The word smart is doing most of the heavy lifting. It gives the impression of superior hydration, even though what you're really buying is one of the most processed waters on the shelf, and one that in many UK regions isn't dramatically different from the water that already comes out of your tap. Smartwater isn't here because it tastes bad or because it's unsafe. It's here because of what it represents. A company re-entering the UK with a new identity, selling a highly processed bottle of water as if it were a natural premium choice. And when a product relies more on the story than the source, that alone earns it the #1 spot.
Number 2. Buxton. One of the most familiar bottled waters in the UK, and that's no accident. Buxton isn't just a household name because people enjoy it, it's a household name because it sits under one of the biggest corporations on earth, Nestlé. A company so large and recognizable that its products appear in nearly every aisle of the supermarket. And while we're not making any accusations here, Nestlé is certainly a memorable character in the global food world, the kind of company people always have opinions about. For years, Buxton has been marketed as a clean, refreshing water sourced from the Peak District. The branding leans heavily on images of untouched landscapes, natural filtration, and purity. It's positioned as the dependable, everyday step up from tap water. Simple, reliable, familiar. But once people actually drink it, the picture becomes more complicated. Buxton is naturally hard water, meaning it contains high levels of minerals like calcium and magnesium. This isn't a flaw, it's just the geological profile of the source. But hard water has a very distinct taste. Many describe it as heavier and more pronounced, the kind of flavour you instantly recognise if you live in a part of the UK where kettles scale up quickly or tea tastes a bit off. Hard water has that mineral bite to it. Some people don't mind the taste, but many first-time drinkers describe it as chalky, metallic, sharp, or slightly limescale-like. The type of flavour that surprises you when you're expecting something soft, smooth, or neutral. And that's where the disconnect begins. Buxton is often priced and positioned as a semi-premium option, above own-brand bottles frequently included in meal deals and always presented as a safe, refreshing upgrade. But when shoppers realise that paying more for water that can actually taste harsher than what they have at home, the loyalty starts to crack. Buxton is here because for a bottle that's meant to taste light and refreshing, but a surprising number of people end up feeling like they're drinking a mild version of their local hard tap water. Their branding gives impression of a safe, reliable step up from tap water. But the moment someone realises they're paying more for water that actually tastes harsher than they have at home, the loyalty starts to crack. Number 3. Asda Still Natural Mineral Water. This brand deserves special mention due to the overwhelmingly negative public reviews, a product which just shows how far we've fallen.
And remember, everything here is not based on factual allegations, but simply based on publicly posted reviews, real shoppers' opinions. What makes this brand stand out is the sheer consistency of the complaints. People say they can open one bottle and it tastes normal, and then the next bottle from the same pack tastes completely different, sometimes described as off, chemical, or thick. That randomness is what unsettles people more than anything. One of the most repeated descriptions is the unexpected fizz. Teachers have reportedly told children they can't bring sparkling water to school, only to find out it was supposed to be still. Alongside the fizz, the smell is a major complaint. Words that appear again and again include eggy, sulfur-like, moldy, and strange. These are subjective experiences, but when so many people describe the same thing, it becomes a pattern worth acknowledging. Add to that the recurring reports of unusual tastes, metallic, chemical, stale, or just unexpectedly different, and it's no surprise customers feel uneasy. But the biggest storm comes from the bottle and lid redesign. Asda switched from a flip cap bottle that many people found easy to open to a much thinner, softer bottle paired with a tightly sealed screw lid attached by a hinge. Many reviewers even compare the new bottle to a plastic bag, saying the material is so thin and flimsy that it barely holds its shape. And others even say the bottle walls are so weak that they've actually split open while being opened, sending water everywhere. This isn't just about being lightweight. Customers feel the design has crossed the line from cost-cutting into inconvenience, with some describing it as cheap film-like plastic that bends, caves in, or collapses instantly. To many long-time buyers, it feels like each redesign gives them worse and worse quality, turning something as basic as opening a bottle of water into a struggle that simply didn't exist before. Number 4. Evian. The luxury alpine water people buy for purity and prestige, only to discover it's one of the harvest-tasting bottled waters in the UK. The branding focuses on the Alps, natural filtration, and the idea that this water is somehow superior to everything else on the shelf. But when you do some digging into what you're actually getting, the picture shifts. People who are used to soft water, whether from their taps or from softer bottled brands, often find Evian surprisingly heavy. Some describe it as chalky, others are slightly metallic, and many say it has a thick mouthfeel they didn't expect from something marketed as clean and refreshing. That mineral heaviness can be quite noticeable, especially if you're drinking it warm or during exercise when you're more sensitive to taste. This is where the tension begins. Evian is sold as the crisp, refreshing premium choice, but for a lot of people, the taste feels anything but light. Another point is the price positioning. Evian often sits near the top of the shelf in terms of cost, even though tap water in many parts of the UK has a mineral profile not too far off from it. And as we mentioned earlier, if some people are paying double the price of petrol for a bottle of water, you may just be naive.
Number 5. Highland Spring. With an image built on clean Scottish landscapes, purple packaging, and the promise of natural purity, is the bottle people reach for when they want something that feels wholesome, uncomplicated, and safe. But once again, the experience people report doesn't always match the image on the label. Highland Spring has built its entire identity around being one of the UK's trusted natural waters, drawn from the Ochil Hills, filtered through volcanic rock and bottled at the source. It's a strong story, and the branding leans heavily into that sense of untouched nature. But when people actually drink it, they often describe something different, a flavour that can feel unexpectedly heavy, mineral-forward, or slightly bitter compared to softer waters. That's because Highland Spring, like Buxton, is naturally harder water. It contains a noticeably higher mineral content, which for some is refreshing, but for many comes across as sharp or even metallic. It's the same effect people notice in hard water regions across the UK. Tea tastes different, kettles scale quickly, and the water itself has a distinct edge to it. A lot of shoppers expecting a smooth mountain-style taste end up surprised by how assertive the flavour is. Then there's the price. Highland Spring is consistently positioned as a premium choice, often costing more than supermarket bottles that some find more neutral and drinkable. And while the source story is strong,
premium placement only works when the taste matches the expectation. For water marketed as gentle, clean and effortless to drink, the heavier profile leaves a lot of people questioning whether it's worth the extra money.
Number 6 and number 7, Tesco still natural mineral water and Sainsbury's still British spring water. On the surface, two separate supermarket bottled brands, but dig a little deeper and you find both trace back to the same region, the Eden Valley in Cumbria, home to one of the UK's largest aquifers, deep boreholes and spring water sources used by bottled water producers. Engineers in Eden Valley now even blend deep underground waters with near-surface supplies when treating local tap water. Because these retailer-owned brands draw on the same region, the distinction between them becomes less about source and more about label, price and presentation. Both bottles are positioned as straightforward British spring water, clean, reliable and value-focused, but that simplicity is part of the trick. When you realize both Tesco and Sainsbury sources are the same, the idea of premium separate source starts to fade. The taste between them is similar, neutral, mild, drinkable, and so is the mineral profile. For many households, especially in areas with soft tap water, the difference between what they already have at home and what's in the bottle is minimal. That raises a basic question. What are you paying for? Because you're not necessarily buying a drastically different source, you're buying branding, packaging, and a convenience label. Tesco and Sainsbury's water aren't on this list because they're unsafe. They're here because they remind us how subtle the bottled water hierarchy really is. When two competing supermarket brands use the same aquifer, the story behind own brand differing sources becomes far less convincing. At one point, the pattern becomes hard to ignore. Most of what the British public pays for in the bottled water aisle isn't the water itself, it's the branding, the convenience, and the illusion of superiority. Whether it's processed water sold as premium, hard water sold as pure, or multiple supermarkets selling the exact same source in a different label, it becomes clear that the difference between what's in the bottle and what comes out of the kitchen tap isn't always as dramatic as people think. And with the UK's strict drinking water standards, many households already have access to water that is tested constantly, monitored closely, and delivered straight into the home for a fraction of the price. For most people, the real upgrade isn't switching bottled water brands, it's stepping away from them altogether. A good long-term alternative is to install a reliable water filtration system at home. Not for medical reasons, not for health claims, but simply for taste, clarity, and peace of mind. A one-time investment can give you cleaner tasting water straight from the tap without the recurring cost of bottles or the hassle of carrying crates home every week. Pair that with a reusable bottle and suddenly you're saving money, reducing waste, and escaping the constant price markup of the bottled water aisle. At the end of the day, bottled water isn't a villain, but it's also not the life-changing upgrade the marketing makes it out to be. The real upgrade is realizing you already have more control, more choice, and more value sitting right at home.